Welcome to the Elevate Your Event podcast, where we talk about how to plan and execute an unforgettable event that will dazzle your guests and generate more income for your organization. From fundraising and securing trendy auction items to event production and logistics, get the best tips and advice from seasoned fundraising and event professionals who have been in your shoes.
Okay, welcome back to the Elevate Your Event podcast, where we talk about all the various ways you can make your next fundraising event better. And we have a cool topic today. And to share this topic, we've got a couple of, I would say, fundraising all-stars in the room. We have Lori Mackay.
Hello.
And we have Elise Druckenmiller.
Hello.
Who's got a sore back. And so if she misbehaves, we're just going to push on her or something. No, we're not that mean. We're not going to do that. Jeff Porter, CEO of Handbid. And the fun topic we're going to talk about is we're actually going to talk about my event. And one of the things as we were kind of brainstorming through topics for conversation was, well, maybe we should take our audience through kind of beginning to end what it's like to plan an event. And I'm going to preface this by saying we are by no means event planning experts, but we've been doing this event for a long time, and it's had its ups and downs, and so we think it might be interesting just to kind of hear what the dynamics are like, and kind of, you guys can use that, as a listener to kind of figure out what would you take on as a best practice, and what would you avoid, something you don't want to do. So a little bit of history on this event. Kentucky Derby is the theme. And so prior to starting our charity, Carrie and I, we came from the East Coast. I went to the University of Virginia. She went to William & Mary. And I unfortunately never got to go to the Kentucky Derby because I always had an engineering final on that day. Okay. And I hated my professors for it, but all of my friends would go. So they'd all drive. It was from Charlottesville to Louisville is not that far. So they would drive to the event, and I would sit at home and watch it on TV. So when I got to Denver, I just picked up the tradition of having a Kentucky Derby party, and we hosted one. And then at some point when we started the charity, one of the things you quickly realize, and we did a podcast on this recently about how do you start your charity up, but you're like, oh gosh, we got to raise money. We actually, we have all these great ambitious ideas, but none of them are actually going to come to fruition unless we actually have funds in the bank. So how are we going to do that? Well, the only thing we knew how to do outside of hiring a grant, consultant was throw a party.
I was going to say party.
We didn't have to throw a party.
Party.
So maybe we should take our Kentucky Derby party and turn it into a fundraiser. And so that became our brilliant idea. And so we did that. And it was interesting because a whole bunch of people that came every year for the free food and drink left and never came back. And a bunch of people who had never before been involved but cared about our charity and our cause, they started coming. So the first one was it was in 2005 or 2006, I can't remember, but it was at our house, and I think we raised $5,000 or $6,000. Okay, and I think most of the stuff that we had was donated from the Rockies because Clint Hurdle, who had a child with Prader-Willi syndrome, was the manager of the Rockies at the time. So, I mean, he was giving us stuff. And so that kind of kicked it off, and then from there it kind of grew. And I think at one point when we had over 200 people showing up at our house, I think our neighbors were the ones that asked us to move it. So we decided it was time to kind of move it to a different venue. So we moved it to the Cable Center, which is at the University of Denver. And it's an event venue. It's a really cool space. It's actually owned by Comcast Cable. And it has a really neat video wall. So that kind of worked well with our event and our theme, because what do we want to do at our event? We want to watch
the horse race.
We want to watch a 2-minute horse race. So with the silent auction and the live auction and the paddle race, and it was a family event, so we had kids games, and we wanted you to bring your kids because we didn't want you to try to figure out how to find a babysitter at 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Okay. So anyway, with that said, it kind of grew and got bigger, and it moved around town to a variety of different places. And then it ended up, COVID comes along. And so we had to turn it into a series of small parties. The Derby actually got moved that year from May to September to Labor Day weekend. And so that bought us some time, obviously, to figure out what we were going to do and were we going to host it or just do it online or whatever. But at the same time, it also allowed us to get a little bit creative about how we could continue to kind of drive the experience. And so for those of our best supporters, we ended up doing a series of kind of private derby parties that were within healthcare, or health, department guidelines in those areas. And then we linked them all together with our live streaming and Zoom, and it was kind of fun. But it was time to get back into something real. And so we ended up planning on doing the Derby again the following year. And it's always the first Saturday in May. And so when you're thinking about running a fundraiser, there's a good and a bad part about that. I mean, the good part is you don't have a choice on the date. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the bad part is you don't have a choice on the date. So the first Saturday in May in Denver, it can be snowing a foot or it can be 80 degrees. I mean, there's really nothing in between those two. And so you're just kind of praying that it's the 80 degrees side of the coin and not the snowing one, but we've had both. And we were also doing it outside because we decided to move it to a brand new constructed park that was part of Fiddler's Green, which is an outdoor amphitheater here in the south part of Denver. And so we were going to roll the dice a little bit because we were moving this event entirely outside. It's never before been entirely outside. So this was going to be kind of a unique experience for us. So we did it, and the weather was great. And we had a band, and we had fireworks, and we had like food trucks, and like we just changed so many things at this event. We took that opportunity. It was so much fun. And that's really been the history. And for those of you who know Handbid well enough, you know that Handbid was born at the Kentucky Derby. The idea was generated off of running this event for 5 or 6 years on paper and hating it more and more every year, and just getting to the point where we wanted to create a better guest experience. And so it's always had a special place in our heart. But there's been so many aspects of the event that haven't changed. Now, what ended up happening was in 2022, we got booted out of our date because it has to be the first Saturday in May. We don't have a choice. And it just so happens that the Anschutz Entertainment Group, AEG, who runs all the concerts at the venue, was hosting a concert on that day. And you really just can't run a fundraiser when 15,000 people are right next to you at a concert. So we had to move the date, and so we ended up doing something in the fall called Country for a Cure. And for those of you who are familiar with that, we brought in a national act from Nashville, and we did an event, and it was great. Okay, now it's time though. Like we decided, let's just stick with Country for a Cure, but we just kept getting booted again, day over day over day for concerts, which, we understand that that's the consequence of picking the venue that we picked, but it just became a point where it was time to figure out how can we get back to a Derby event. We had a lot of people telling us they missed it. I think we as an organization and as a board and as a planning committee were kind of tired of the Derby theme. And I think probably we were just more tired of just all the stress related to having to do it on a certain day at a certain time, because the horse race is at roughly 4:50 p.m. on the first Saturday in May, Mountain Time, every year. It doesn't change. I mean, yes, it varies a little bit, but not much. So that became a bit of the challenge for us, and I think we were ready to just do something a little bit different. But our fundraisers were not, and so you got to listen to what your donors are asking you to do. So anyway, that's where we ended up. And so we have now secured a date. We are going back to the Derby on May 4th. Everybody's excited.
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th, 2024.
I'm like, please, can we make this a Star Wars Derby?
A Star Wars Derby.
That's the after party.
That's going to be so fun.
This is what we're going to be talking about, folks. It's all the amazing ideas you get from your planning committee, and then nobody who wants to go do them, and nobody that wants to pay for them either. We're going to talk about that next. So anyway, we kicked off our planning before Thanksgiving, and we like to spend about I think a good 6 months in advance. There's a lot we know, right? So this is not from scratch. We've done this. Oh my God, how many times? 1 million, right? 14 or 15 times. So we know exactly how to run a Derby event. Now the question is that what's going to change? What do we want to change? What do we want to stay the same? And so that's going to really start to drive, kind of how this event's going to go. And so what we want to do over the next, I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, but over the next 6 months, we'll have various episodes kind of walking through this. And So the one thing that we're going to start with here is kind of how did we kick this off? How did we organize the team, and kind of how are we organizing our ongoing meetings, and kind of where are we going from here? And I thought that'd be helpful. And then throughout the rest of the episodes, we'll talk about like how's the silent auction going, or how are sponsorship, sales going, or what else are we doing that might that's new, that's actually working out, or what decisions did we make up front that now we're going to have to go change because it's not working out, or all that other kind of stuff.
Who is fighting with who?
Yes, it's going to be like a little soap opera, right? You guys want all the dirt?
You want all the dirt?
We're going to make it interesting.
I know. If you were on the episode where we talked about my board sounding like Thanksgiving dinner, then you should have showed up at our Derby planning meeting, because it wasn't just our board, but we had a couple of newcomers.
Oh, I feel so sorry for them.
They had deer in headlights looks at the other end of the table as we're just going at it with each other about whatever. Anyway, we're passionate people. That's what we are.
That's what you are. Yep.
We're passionate people. Anyway, so the first thing that we did when we had, so obviously we asked everybody to come together. We met at our house, about a 2.5, 3 hour meeting, and we discussed our goals. And the very first thing was we discussed vision and goals. Mm-hmm. Okay. So vision, we want to do it back at Marjorie Park at Fiddler's Green. We want to still have some sort of live entertainment. We always in the past had live entertainment that wasn't really, like we didn't really invest in it. These were people that wanted to kind of play on the side. But when we did that Derby event in 2021 and we brought in Union Gray, we made them kind of a headliner portion of the event, and people loved it. So we want to go back to that, where we've got live bands that will play most likely after the horse race. And again, this run a show with you guys, it's fluid. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's not entirely sure what's going to happen, but we have a general idea. Okay. So we want the same event. We want the outdoor LED screen. We want the stage. We want the band. We want the fire pits. We want a lot of the things that we brought in with Country for a Cure. We want those, right? We bought these like kind of semicircular kind of sectional sofas with a bigger fire pit. We sold those for $5,000 each. There was a lot of skepticism they were going to sell. They sold in a weekend. Yeah. We only had 4 of them, and then we ended up having to add a 5th. They sold in a weekend. Okay. They came with table service. They also came with bottle service, which we're going to eliminate this year.
Yeah, that was not a good idea.
Well, it's interesting, and I'm not sure how to appropriately say this, but you can get your guests too drunk. So,
right. You want there to be some level of alcohol in a lot of cases, but sometimes too much is not a good thing.
Yeah, I think we all agreed that, and there was no complaints about it, but there was definitely a lot of like, man, those drinks were strong kind of stuff. So anyway, we want everybody to have a good time. We want everybody to drink responsibly, but we also want them to be paying attention when we do a battle race as well. So anyway, so we are going to bring those back. I don't think we're going to do the national act from Nashville. They're really hard to schedule. I think what we found was people were there to support the event. They weren't necessarily there to see the front men. I mean, they think that was an added bonus, and it was really cool. And I don't know, maybe in the future one day we try that again, but I think we just decided we're going to kind of focus our budget on other things. Mm-hmm. And we have so that's an expense that would come off the record from Country for a Cure, but there would be some expenses that would come on, like this LED wall, which we had at the previous Derby, but not at this thing. So we kind of set the vision of kind of what we want, and then we started talking about the budget. Okay. And always good to walk into that meeting if you're kind of the visionary with a proposed budget. You don't want to build the budget on the fly with anybody. So we walked in there with a proposed budget. There were a few of us who kind of sat down and looked at what we spent in 2021, what we spent in 2022 at Country for a Cure, to figure out what we want to do in 2024 with this Derby. So anyway, we looked at what our ticket sales are going to look like. Okay, and so how many of these premium fire pits are we going to sell? How many? And then we also have we also have a kind of a square fire pit table. And so this is all for outdoor stuff. So it's really neat. So we have a square fire pit, if you think about it, in the propane tanks in the cabinet below. And then we put 6 plastic Adirondack kind of deck chairs around it. And so we were selling those for $2,400 and we sold all of those last year. So we're estimating selling those again. There's about 15 tables of those. And then we also had some other types of chairs that we sold, but we found there was a lot of confusion and people like camping out at them. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, that's actually a paid seat. You can't sit there at this concert. So we decided to eliminate all of that. And so everything else.
We simplified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We simplified. You're right.
You're welcome.
Everything else is general admission.
General admission.
Okay.
If you happen
And
to
so-
get one of those tables, are they still going to be there?
They'll be there.
They'll be
Okay.
there. You just won't have to you can just sit there. First come, first serve.
Yeah.
And so now the
come
question
early.
is what do you charge for these things? Well, we decided to leave the bigger tables the same price. And then the next thing would be these individual tickets. So what do you charge for an individual ticket? Well, my opinion, okay, and again,
Well, how much money do you want to raise? Do you want to raise what you raised last year, or do you want to increase your revenue?
I do
Jeff?
want to increase, but
Okay.
and we're going to talk about how we do that here in a second because we are definitely forecasting a fairly sizable increase, and we're going to talk about why and how. But one of the things that we've messed with over the years is what should an individual ticket cost? Okay, and one of the variables we use is what does it cost to actually run the event? Okay, and so we'll look at what is it per person to run this event? So we'll take, in this case here, I think our budget's a little shy of $60,000. So how many people are coming? Take the 60, divide it by that. What is it? And so in our case, it came down to about $168 a person to run this event if we estimate these amount of people are coming. Okay, so what would you set your ticket price at? Well, at least that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. So you at least want to cover your costs with your GA tickets, okay? And so that's how we looked at and started to price this thing out. And I get it. Everybody's sensitive to what is it going to cost. But I will tell you this. Every time we've dropped that base ticket price, those people don't spend any more money than their ticket price. So for us, it's important to say, look, for people buying individual tickets, yes, there's a few that will upgrade and they'll spend money in the auction and they'll do the paddle raise and whatnot. But for a lot of them, they're there to watch the concert, eat your food, drink your drinks, and maybe if you have a good silent auction, bid on some stuff. So you need to get some profit out of them. That's how we look at it. So we will set this price. Right now it's set at $175, but we're toying with $200 for this ticket.
Are you doing just one ticket?
Well, or you can buy the fire pit or the premium. Yeah.
So general admission and then
We
just
thought
the
maybe, are
larger
you thinking
stuff.
like maybe a couple's ticket or something?
Or family.
We could do that. We've had family tickets in the past. We had what we called the jockey package. And I think the problem is that the kids' prices, it's hard because and honestly, these are your donors. So how do you tell it when you're like, okay, so we have a kid's price and it's 13 and below and they're half price. And then one of your best donors shows up with his 17-year-old kid that can eat the amount of 3 adults, and he says, "Oh, he's a kid. He's $75." It's hard. So anyway, we eliminated kids pricing with Country for a Cure, and we decided to keep it eliminated. I think maybe what we do. See, we're planning right here on this podcast.
Yeah.
That's cool. So maybe what we do
Maybe you
is,
set an age limit.
yeah, you set an age limit, or you just kids under 8 are free, and everybody else is $200 or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Because those kids
I
aren't
think
going to
that's
do anything.
fair. They're not going to do anything. Yeah.
They're not going to do anything. So anyway, I think that's a good point, and I think we could definitely
You
do
could put them
something
to
like
work.
that.
Yeah, you
But-
could. Give them
Looking
some
for
trash
volunteers.
bags. Give them some
But
trash
we're
bags.
estimating, and again, the other thing you have to ask yourself is, do I want an event where there's 1,000 people paying $75, or do I want an event where there's 200 people all paying $500 or $600? And we always like to have the more intimate events. We just think that we can provide a better guest experience, and it feels like less of a derby frat party because there's one of those in Denver already. So we look at that and we say, you agree, right? We all went to that one last year. We went. we had to go experience a frat party for ourselves, and it was a frat party.
It was a frat party.
So we're looking at
they kicked you out at 6:00.
300 guests. Okay, 300 guests, and we're looking at roughly $90,000 in ticket sales. Okay.
So the 300 guests are general admission, or that includes your tables?
That includes the tables.
Everything.
$90,000.
Okay.
And
About
your expenses are, what was your expenses?
57.
57. So we have to make all of our profit on everything else we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So silent auction, $25,000 goal. Okay.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. I mean, like, we don't have a big silent auction, and we're not, and it's, we don't have, but 50 to 75 items. Maybe we'll get a little bit more than that. So we want them to be good. So we have a $25,000 goal here. One of the things we've really decided to push this year is a live auction. We have a $20,000 goal. I think we can hit that for sure, especially if we sell some doubles of some stuff.
Yeah.
I think we can definitely get there. Paddle raise, 20,000. We're really conservative on our paddle raise. Our problem is outdoors. It's tough, especially at this type of event. So that one's a little bit iffy for us. We've had hit or miss with the paddle raise, honestly. When we've done it inside, it's been way better. When we've gone outside, it's a little harder. Prize drawing, $5,000. So really not much there, but we always get donated some sort of electronic equipment that is really hard to put into a silent auction. So better to raffle it off. And then fundraising pages. So what we do at our event every year is we do fundraising pages on the Handbid platform, peer-to-peer. Everybody creates a page, and then we use how much they raise as some sort of incentive or ticket to get into the event. So we'll say to a family, hey, look, if you raise $10,000 on your page, we'll give you, 4 admissions, or we'll give you a table or whatever. I think we have thresholds in there that kind of get people there so that people feel like there's a, and the beauty of fundraising pages is it's like almost all profit. So we do that. And every year we raise anywhere from 30 to 40,000 on those. So you add all that up along with tickets, and we're at about 188,000. Okay. Every year this event's done around 130 to 140. So we're asking for a significant increase, but I think we can get that. I mean, I'm not too worried about it. The one thing I did not put in here is sponsorships. And the reason is because in a lot of cases, our sponsorships end up being table sales. But we have toyed with the idea of trying to have like a title
sponsor.
And we've had those in the past, but we've still also given them tables. So one of the things we could do is maybe, forecast out like sponsorship revenue above and beyond the tables we're giving them. So we could figure that out.
What about the betting?
Yeah, so we do. We build betting software, and to your point, we have not forecasted that out. And so we take about a 10% rake on that. So we could, I think every year we have about 20,000 bet in the race at the event. So that'd be about another $2,000 we'd get out of it in profit. So that's not bad. So we could throw that in there. That'd get us to 190,000. So that'd be good. So we presented that, and there was not a lot of conversation. It would have been actually nice to have you there, Lori, to remind us about the betting
where were you, Lori?
Conveniently skipped that one.
I know. So then we start talking about what the expenses are going to be. So, for the most part, it's not entirely true. The venue is not going to cost us anything, but there are going to be expenses related to the venue. And then we have some other stuff in here. So we've got travel. So we have a headliner that's going to cost us not 30-something thousand like the front men, but they're going to cost us about $4,000. But we have to pay for some travel on that. So say about $4,500 on that. An opening band that's about half that. The AV and stage and sound. Okay, so this is a little tough. This is going to be about $16,000. Okay, I haven't figured out, like, I haven't gotten all the bids in yet, but just suffice it to say the LED screen that has to go up to watch the race and do everything else, it comes with this really elaborate, like, stand and a generator we have to get and everything else. That's $10,000 in and of itself, with all in, with the staff and all of the lighting and everything else that goes with it. And then I got to get a stage and sound's about 6. So you're looking at about 16 between the two. Now, Country Fair Cure, we were looking at 24. So that's about an $8,000 savings. But again, I'm not having to put together as elaborate of a setup as we were having to do for the other one. So that's what we have there. And then, believe it or not, this actually might change. But we budget out the cost of liquor because we don't always get all of it donated. Mm-hmm. So we sell mint juleps at the event, and we use a local distillery who premixes and pre-makes all the mint julep source. They're amazing. And he sells them to us at our cost, at his cost. His cost, not our cost, right? He sells them to us at his cost. But that's, to sell all of that liquor, it's only $2,000. And it's a lot of liquor that we go through. So that cost is in there. There's about another $2,000 in wine and beer as kind of a backup. If we find a sponsor, that goes away. But we put it in the budget because you never know. Okay. I have $4,000 for a live auctioneer in here. Hey guys, there's auctioneers that are $500 and there's auctioneers that are considerably higher than $4,000. So we don't know yet. We haven't picked an auctioneer. We haven't hired anybody. I'm of the opinion that they work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
you should not have a board member do that.
Or Cousin Eddie either. For sure. We've seen some tragic examples of board members being auctioneers or paddle raise people and whatnot. So yes. So I slipped this next one in here. And I don't think anybody noticed when I said it at the meeting. So
a tip for Jeff?
For now, no, not a tip for me. Fireworks for $2,000. So we had
I knew about this.
Yeah, so we had fireworks.
It's only $2,000 for fireworks?
Well, so
what kind of fireworks you getting, Jeff?
Oh, they're good. So
they're good.
He's driving to Wyoming.
Band, no, listen.
They're better than Wyoming.
Yeah, Wyoming. We don't break the law in Colorado, Lori, by going to Wyoming to get our fireworks. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Anyway.
We already used all the ones from Wyoming. We can't get them anymore.
I know.
These are going to be professional grade.
You want to see Elisa's husband get all nervous and worked up, shoot off illegal fireworks at your house and see how that goes.
The firefighter.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, the battalion chief who doesn't want to be within 100 miles of me shooting off illegal fireworks. Anyway, no, we're digressing. So our opening band, and they're also good friends of ours. He does all of the pyro for the Broncos and you name it around town. So anyway, he would cut us a deal on some of his stuff if we went that way. So I threw it in here. I've got our generator in here. I've got food. Now, we made a decision when we went outdoors to move away from catered and just catered meals in general, whether it's stations or it's sit down. We've done all of that. We've done the sit down, we've done the catered, we've done the stations, we've done the buffets, whatever. Look, I love the catering company we used to use, and if you're doing catering, and you need a recommendation, we can give you one. But we just felt like outside, we could save a lot of money and not have to pay a lot of catering staff to just do food trucks. And obviously, the struggle or the complaint or the risk is that people stand around waiting for food. Well, there's a way around that. You can fix that problem by basically going to the food trucks, pre-negotiating what they're going to serve, and then that's all they make. So
no customizations.
No. You go to the Denver taco truck, we've negotiated they're making 2 different types of tacos. They're making a veggie taco, they're making a steak taco, and that's it. And that's what you get. I think we had more than that. But anyway, you get the point. And they're just throwing them out there. So they just put them out on tables and you pick them up. And that problem was largely eliminated. But look at this, you guys. I mean, for 305 people, we're estimating $30 to $35 a person. So about $10,000 for food. That's not bad.
No.
I mean, our catering bill used to be more than double that.
And I think that, the feedback that we've gotten is that the food trucks, people have actually enjoyed it more. Logistically, you have to look at your venue too, right? Where do you put catering versus food trucks or whatever? But I think the food trucks have by far been the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So here comes not the controversial, but here came the bulk of the debate. and it's around staff. Okay, so we have Handbid staff in here, and unfortunately, Elise Druckenmiller would not give me a discount, so I got to pay for that. But and we don't need a lot of Handbid staff, but so obviously people that are going to help with check-in and check-out and all that kind of stuff. Table service staff. So we find people that work at Fiddlers, and they're typically volunteers at Fiddlers, and then the money that they're making goes to the charity of their choice. We end up paying them, and they service all of our high-end tables. So what's nice about that, it's an outdoor event. I bought my circular table. I paid $5,000. I don't want to go wait in the food truck line. I don't want to go wait in the mint julep line. These ladies will bring it to you, and they did a great job. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have them back in here. They were $250 each, is what we donated to them, and then the event planner. So we've never had one, you guys. Like, it sounds odd, but for us, the event planner, we've always just kind of done it. And so what's happened when it was at our house, it's easy to be the event planner. Our house is not that big, and we can run around and we can yell at each other and help each other with problems and whatnot. Then we would move to different venues, and it got a little bit harder. But man, you move to this park, I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
And it just, at Country for a Cure, it was just unmanageable, honestly. I mean, we're trying to text each other, we're trying to call each other, but you just got a lot going on. It's nice to have a headpiece and someone screaming in your ear and saying they need help with this, and and that's just part of it. The other part of it is just this, like, I'm there now, like, to not just enjoy the event, but to build relationships and talk to our best donors. I don't need to be, Elise doesn't need to be, Carrie doesn't need to be, Lori doesn't need to be dealing with check-in issue, or dealing with a silent auction problem, or dealing with
picking the red M&Ms out of
the green room requirements, and making, oh my God, you put
driving them back and forth to their hotel so they can shower.
Yes. And you put Diet Coke in there, and they don't like Diet Coke. They like Diet Pepsi. So get all the Diet Coke out and put the Diet Pepsi in. Like, somebody can go deal with that stuff. And so we decided to hire an event planner, and it's comprehensive. It's not just someone showing up that day. This person's going to be involved on a weekly basis, leading up to the event, in meetings, running the meetings, staffing it with 6 people. I don't even want to get into all the details, but it's about $7,600, and I'm like, that sounds like a pretty reasonable deal to me. So we threw that in there. And then we have to pay staff at the venue, and so that stuff's in here for security and
cleaning,
trash, and bartenders, and you name it. And then obviously we like to give out swag. I mean, you're going to get a Derby cup, you're going to get a Derby, maybe a blanket if it's cold or whatever. So we design. The
only reason I'm coming is because I got to get my Derby cup.
Derby cup. I know people collect those, and then they call us when they break them and ask if we have any archives, and maybe we do.
That's a great auction item.
Yeah. So anyway, and there's graphics and other work that we need to do, and that's kind of in here as well. So that adds up to just around $60,000. So, and I'm rounding, you guys. So, I mean, just to tell you that we are a little bit more calculated and specific. It's actually $57,227, but I like to round up. So anyway, $60,000. Okay. So our net profit on this is $130,000. Not bad.
Right.
Okay. For our event, which is always netted around 80 to 90, this is a good step up for us. Okay. So I would say, for the most part, not a lot of people at the meeting were questioning the budget, but there were a few. And so let's just kind of talk about the philosophy behind the debate, and also kind of the mentality around the debate, and kind of and where we came out. Okay, because this is not atypical of a charity and kind of how they think through their events, and probably not even atypical for a board or a committee or anybody else to think through things and try to figure out, like, what's the best way to look at this. Because if we did 130 last year, you're saying you're going to spend $60,000. That seems really high, right? And so the first thing you have to say is well, why do we expect we're going to make 130 again? Okay. And then the next thing is looking at this list of things, why do you always assume that you have to cut costs? Like, why is that the first thing that we're going to do when we're looking at the fact that we think this event is too expensive? And so, for us, it's like, okay, you want to cut costs? What do you want to cut? Give me something on this list you want to cut out. And the first thing everybody was like, well, what about the event planner? That's a new cost. Let's take that out. I'm like, okay, so now it's not $60,000. It's, $54,000. Who cares? Like, I mean, at this point, like, who's going to go do that work now?
Right.
Right? Because I honestly would rather, like, build relationships with my donors and my attendees than worry about the green room, or
leading up to the event, focusing on the sponsorships that have lacked in the past that are going to make up that, 130 that you've done previously to your 188 or 190 goal that you have. Where are you going to get that from? The sponsorships? Why have you never gotten it? Because you've never had time. Why? Because you're doing all of the things that the event planner is going to do for you.
Yes. So, and it was just like, that's a thing where, like, it became clear that when you're looking at an event budget and you're saying to yourself, like, okay, so what's an appropriate expense ratio? I don't even know if there is one. Right? Some events are expensive, and some events, like, nothing is linear also, right? That's the other thing we discussed. Like, if I spent $40,000 last year and I made 100, okay? So that's, everybody's like, okay, events should be about 40% cost. So that sounds about right. If I make 41, that doesn't mean I make 101. If I spend 42, it doesn't mean that I make 102. It's not linear like that. It's like, you're going to make a change, and all of a sudden it's not going to be 40, it's going to be 50. Like, that's how costs go, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden it's like, well, 50, it's just going to put pressure on you to raise more money. So you want to find investments that are going to drive revenue. Well, investments for us it sounds weird because it wasn't coming across well in the meeting, but it's like, investments for us is to get us away from doing these planning things and get us out there talking to sponsors and driving revenue. That's what we should be doing, not negotiating the green room contract or making sure that my sound guy shows up on time or making sure that the AV guy brought the generator, right? I mean, and these are all things that were on my plate at the last event. So that's kind of the objective of the whole thing. So, and again, when you're thinking about, again, as a committee, like, you can nickel and dime your budget, you guys. You can go in there and you can say, well, let's cut $500 here. But those dollars that you're cutting aren't necessarily going to move the needle much. You need to be focused on, how do I make more money?
Right. I think it's a mind shift change. It goes from, so many people are wrapped up. We've talked about this. So many people are wrapped up in thinking that this is a cost center, but it's really a profit center. And you have to look at it from that perspective.
Thinking about fundraising as a profit center is definitely not intuitive to a lot of folks. And some of them happen to be our customers, right? Some of them happen to be on my board or on my auction committee. But the point is that it's hard, because what we needed to spend the vast majority of time doing, by the way, just to settle this matter, the budget was approved. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but to settle this matter is we need to get everybody organized and focused around revenue and not the expense. The expense is important. There's no doubt. But we're also the type that are saying, we're going to have a good event, because it's not gonna matter that much. Right.
Well, and you're combining two different types of events this year compared to what you've done in the past.
Yeah.
You used to do a derby that maybe had some live music aspect to it with the food and the bedding and everything. And then you had the concert. So now this year it's going to be the derby concert. Yeah. And it's a more complex event. It requires more investment. It requires more coordination leading up to that.
And more risk.
And more risk. Yep. And I agree. I think freeing up your time and freeing up the rest of your board's time so that they can go out and actually get the sponsorships needed.
Get the sponsorships, get the items, not worry about the permits for the pyro that Jeff threw into the budget that nobody knew about.
Yeah, sell those tables out, sell everything out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And look, we have a great board, and we have a supportive board, and we have a hardworking board, and they will show up on the Thursday or the Friday or whenever they are allowed to show up at this venue to help set up. And
we're looking for volunteers.
Yeah. and that all works. That part is awesome. But once the event starts, if I have a board member that bought a table, I want them at their table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly. And I've said this to even some of my family members who are board members.
They deserve that.
They do.
This event has matured. The organization has matured. It's time for you guys to get out and start working on your fundraiser.
Not in it.
In it.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like this is a common theme.
Well, there's always been resistance and I think the board is kind of naturally there. But in the past, this is a battle I would lose. Mm-hmm. And this was a battle this year that wasn't even really a battle. I mean, it was a couple of people that were still pushing back, but ultimately
the majority of the table said, absolutely, this needs to happen. I agree 100%.
Yes.
No, I don't want you doing that, and I don't want to do it either.
Right.
It's time that we do this. It's time that we make these changes. It's time that we take some of these risks.
Yes. And I spent $2,400 on my table at Country for a Cure, and I did not sit at it.
No, me too.
You know? And, I'm not complaining about that, but I am complaining about the fact that I should have been doing something else besides what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So, and that message was heard loud and clear. I think after the last event, I think a couple of the board members that were conscious of where we were spending money get it now. That it's time for us to be smarter about where we're spending money. Mm-hmm. And sometimes smarter doesn't mean cutting costs. It means spending money. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big takeaway from this part. So we've organized our teams, and I kind of want to wrap this up because I don't want to spend too much time on the budget. The budget was approved, and then it's really sitting down and saying, how do you want to organize yourselves? And so we organized our teams into, I'd say a bunch of different groups. And let me just pull it up, and I'll kind of walk you guys through it because I think it's which good.
I would say this is probably the most organized, at least as far as
I've
been
come on.
As far as I've ever been involved, which is not as long as the rest of your board, but in terms of this committee and planning this event, I've done it now for 3 or 4 years, and we've never had this.
All right. So I'm gonna read through kind of what our different categories are. Okay, and we use Trello. Okay, so we have a backlog, and so there's an There's a meeting coming up on December 5th, and there's some people that have now their only task really is to get into the board, and then we're going to start making sure that we can start assigning stuff at the next meeting. But we have a category for liquor and bar, graphics, social and promotion, sponsorship and ticketing, venue and event planning, auction, catering and food, AV and entertainment, and volunteers.
So somebody
will own every single one of those categories. So what's in there? For example, connect with the brand agency and get a quote for graphics. Okay. Determine the sponsorship packages and ticket prices. Mm-hmm. We have proposed ticket prices. We have proposed sponsorship packages, but whoever's going to be on the sponsorship committee or whoever's running that is going to finalize that information. And then obviously we'll work with our branding group to build out the sponsorship materials that we can start sending out. And that's all going to happen in December. Okay. Set up the tickets and sponsorships in Handbid. Somebody smarter about Handbid should do that than me. I'm looking at Elise. Anyway, design and build sponsorship collateral. I talked about that one. Contact AG. Because obviously we're doing a concert we're doing a fundraiser at their venue. Reach out to KYGO, who's a local radio station, see if they might promote, just stuff like that. So I'm not going to read you all of them, but you kind of get the point of what we discussed. Go put together a silent auction spreadsheet, pull in everything we've sold in the past, see what donations we think we can get again, add new stuff to the list, assign out who's going to go get it, right? Have them start getting it, right? Finalize the who's doing audio for us, finalize who's doing the AV, finalize who's the band contracts, all of the above. So all of this stuff is kind of in this list. And so that is what we'll start working on. We finalized the event planner contract. That's done. And now we're working on. You can mark that task done for me. Done. Yes. Elise is in charge of volunteers, so that'll be the best part.
Because nobody else I feel like I got voluntold.
Oh man, we've been to so many events where people will show up and they're like, I was told to be here at 5. I have no idea what I'm doing. So anyway, I'm glad that Elise is running volunteers because that'll be good. But catering, we got to nail down that kind of stuff. So that's all in the works, and I get it. It's May 4th. But we want to get going on this now because, 1, some of these vendors book up. 2, it comes way faster than you think. 3, I'm sick and tired of finding out in May or April that, I already did all my donations for the year. Had you notified me in January, I would have had something for you. So everything's going out in January. Mm-hmm. So anyway.
Or even December to get those end of year donations.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll do another episode, and I think what we'll cover in that is we'll kind of give you guys an update on how things are going and, kind of what kind of snags we're running into and what types of changes we might need to make. So one thing that we absolutely will not plan for is the weather. It's just going to be what it is.
Yep. That's what happened last year.
Yep.
Downpour. Then it cleared up and was gorgeous.
It was a beautiful night.
Yep.
Yes. We mistimed the weather so bad. That's a whole episode on like the disasters around our sound company. But had our sound person actually gotten things working on time, we would have done our sound check while it was sunny. We would have covered all the instruments while it rained, and then we would have been ready on time for the concert. But no, we did the sound check in the middle of a downpour. So anyway, oh my God, I can't believe I just brought up that memory.
It's okay.
Well, if
Take
it's
a
any
breath.
consolation, he remembers you giving him your jacket.
Yes. Oh, yes. The band.
Jack.
That's right. Anyway, okay. So hopefully you guys found this, helpful. This is something that, obviously, as you can see, it's not a science. It's probably more of an art, but it's just one of those things where even though we've done this a long time and we kind of know how to pull this event off, we still have the same conversations every year, which is good. So, any other closing thoughts from you guys?
I guess I should log into my Trello board.
You need to accept your role.
Maybe I should stay away.
You put in a task on the Trello board to invite Lori to the next board planning meeting.
Yeah, and I'm going to rope her into my...
The voluntold.
Yes, the volunteers. There you go. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening as we kind of walk through this. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys, and we will be back again soon with another episode of Elevate Your Event. Until then, happy fundraising.